What's going on, everybody? This is Black Men Sundays. I'm your host, Corey Sylvester Murray, and we're talking about generational wealth, finance, business, and of course, mental health. And if you're looking for a mental health specialist, check out Dr. Briggs Bolin.
Hi, I'm Dr. Izetta Briggs Bowling. Connect with me for professional mental health counseling and support services designed to help individuals and families navigate stress, trauma, substance use recovery, and life transitions. Email me at drbowling@ibcyclebreakers.org or call me directly at 845-313-4496 for a free consultation. Now, back to Black Men Sundays.
It's a Black Man Sunday. Time to put all childish things away. I refuse to be the man I was yesterday. Gotta put my best foot forward and elevate.
Now, today's guest is Michael E. Davis. This brother is the founder and executive director of Ethos Education Group and creator of the Ethos Village platform, a faith-rooted, AI-powered ecosystem designed to help student athletes discover their purpose and become transformational leaders. Michael is also a former 3-year starter and team captain at UC Berkeley, earned his MBA from Northeastern University, and has built a successful career spanning finance, sports management, education, and leadership development. He was also named Most Valuable Financial Advisor by DCEO magazine and has spent more than a decade mentoring and coaching young athletes. Today, he's on a mission to help the next generation, not only in sports, but in life. So, Michael, welcome to Black Men Sundays, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Happy Father's Day. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Back at you, man. So, first off, how did you set up Ethos Education Group? Like, did you have any partners?
Yes, actually I did. Tim Brown and Everson Walls. We sat back and said, hey, we need to do more for our community. And, at that point in time, there were clients of mine with my for-profit business as far as sports representation, and had a lot of good, deals that we've done and monetized their brands. But we felt like we're leaving a lot of stuff on the table undealt with in regards to our families that were striving to see, our athletes in one way and trying to get them to see it in a broader sense. And I think we had to do a better job. So that's where Ethos came about, really trying to change the mental paradigm of how student athletes saw themselves, and learn about the valuable traits that they have, that are transferable skill sets that allows for them to be great leaders, great husbands, wives, just community leaders. But they had to go through that process of changing their mindset and having a whole holistic side of who they were and how they saw themselves beyond the sport in which they play.
Got you. I love that, man. And also the Ethos Village platform, faith
Yes,
rooted,
sir.
AI powered ecosystem. So, first off,
Yeah.
what was the impetus of setting up the Ethos Village platform?
It was really tough to scale utilizing the workshops and things I did with Tim Brown and Everson Walls and talking about identity and purpose and value and vision and goals, what we call as a legacy plan. It was hard to go to all these little towns and cities here in Texas, and we had to use technology to kind of bridge the gap. And so looking at where, master classes and Facebook and LinkedIn, we say, can we build a blend of those platforms that are already proven, that are already being used, but can we use it in a magnitude that allows for our kids to kind of grow in a safe haven and have these conversations. So not only do we want to have a place where we can actually produce this information, have conversation, but also where it was a safe haven, being private, not where the kids are going to be ridiculed about thinking about something outside of sports. And so that was pretty big for us. So trying to find the right balance. I couldn't find that within, just the tech world. There was nothing out there that provided that holistic platform. So we built it ourselves.
Now, you've worked with student athletes for decades. So, what's
Yes,
the
sir.
biggest challenge facing young Black men today that most people aren't talking about?
Me being a coach and looking at all the different families that I've touched and been connected to, It was just really rooted in one way in looking at a kid, which was just being that athlete. And the student was a distant second. And so everything was put into that basket of being an athlete. And you kind of fast forward to now with NIL, you just could have just put things on steroids. You put more money, you doubled down on the way families thought about, hey, this is the way to make it. This is my way out. It's your way in, but it's not your way out. Academics is your way out. That's sustainable. The way in is through the sport, because that's going to get you there, and it's going to leave, no matter how good you are, Hall of Fame or not, you're going to have to make a transition. So if you know you have to make that transition, why not have that conversation about your identity and your purpose beyond the sport in which you play? Put the sport in the proper mindset to say, this is how I get here, but it's not how I'm going to sustain my greatness and my God-given purpose.
And many athletes know who they are on the field, but
That's
not
right.
who they are off the field. So
That's
why
right.
is identity so important before success arrives?
You have a place to ground yourself, right? When all this, the scores and the scoreboards and everything kind of bleeds out to be zero or the lights turn off, if you're rooted in your identity and your purpose in the sport and that light goes off, so does your identity, so does that value of yourself, which then sparks this whole inner battle of, do I have value or not? If I can't score, if I can't win the games in which I'm asked to win, from a transactional standpoint, if that transaction is not there in place, do I not have value? Of course you do. But you leave yourself in this place that when you only root yourself in that one element, that you know is going to leave, you're going to have an imbalance in how you see yourself. And you're struggling. You're going to be like a leaf in the wind, trying to find this purpose, trying to find happiness. You're always chasing, right? Things that you can never get because you're never grounded in your true identity and purpose, that obviously goes beyond the sport in which you play. So I think you
Okay.
always had an inner battle if you don't set the foundation first, right? Knowing that's who you are. Now you can go ahead and say, hey, this is just something I do well, right? I get paid well in doing it, but it's not who I am. There's more to me than just that. So when you can able to see it that from that perspective, there's a lot more there that makes up your value that you can be attached to, that won't go away when the school board goes away, or you get injured, or your eligibility runs out. Whatever the situation is that causes that identity piece to leave, there's a bigger element that you already knew was there, that you're growing into and growing with.
Now, I've heard you say purpose a few times. You definitely talk
Yes, sir.
about purpose. So, how
Yes,
can
sir.
a young man discover his God given purpose in a world full of distractions and expectations?
Man, that is a very hard thing to do. Sometimes it takes years, as just trying to work through and turn the noise off. But you got to sit down and do the work to understand what that is. And there's no secret sauce to it. I think you have to go through the process of asking those questions. Why you're here, what really resonates within your spirit. I believe your spirit is connected to God, and God's connected to your spirit. So there's an element of having a relationship with God and finding that purpose. But we have to turn the noise off. And sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes that's mom. Sometimes that's dad. Sometimes that's the coach. Sometimes that's your best friend. Sometimes that's society as a whole that just drives you into one little pocket, in how you're supposed to think. And so getting into that safe haven, which I said earlier, allows for us to have these true conversations, to have that self-reflection, to be able to look in the mirror, to ask those hard questions about, do we feel good about where we are and where we want to go in life? Do we give ourselves enough grace to be able to let things go, to be able to look at things differently as it relates to how we feel within our spirit? So there's a lot of things that have to happen, that just doesn't happen overnight. So it's definitely a loaded question. It's a lot of hard work to do. It may take years to find it, But you have to put the work in earlier to do that, and work with other mentors and people that have went through that process and know how difficult it is to do, to help guide you as you're going through, to ask those questions, to make sure you stay on track, to make sure you don't doubt yourself and give up during that process.
Now, what are parents getting wrong when it comes to raising and supporting talented student athletes?
I really believe that our parents really mean well, right? They want the best for our kids, right? And I've seen this as a coach, that we do so much as parents where we don't want them to feel the pain. We don't want them to feel the losses, um, just the disappointment. And I think sometimes that's your biggest teacher, is falling down and having to get back up. Building up those elements of that tough skin that sometimes through that pain, right, becomes the blessing. Going through the process is the blessing. So it's not always going to be win-win-win, right? You have to take those L's to develop, right, I think the long-term identity and purpose of where you want to go. To get to that place, you have to go through the fire to get to the diamonds. So I think, letting go and trusting in the process, letting your kid feel that pain, letting them feel that disappointment, walking them through the lesson of getting back up. I think that if I was to say, what can parents do better? That's probably one of the things that I would see as a commonality of, on professional side, when I played as a coach, that became the common denominator, trying to get the parents just to trust the process is just as important as winning, right? Sometimes it might be even more important. So I think just letting go and trusting in the process.
Great information. Now, NIL has changed college sports forever. So, what do
Yes.
parents need to understand right now that many still don't?
That's a great question too. I think NIL is really based on a transaction, right? It's based on, you give me so many yards or so many points, I'm going to give you this amount of money. But I think you have to walk in the process of understanding that you're a student first, athlete second. There's only a small amount of percentage of kids that walk into this environment, into this market, that's going to make the big NIL dollars and rev share and all the things that we highlight. The media does a great job in blowing that up. But you don't hear about the kids that don't make it out the portal, or they did get a scholarship and they gave their scholarship away because they went into the portal to find a better opportunity and never found it. Where are those kids? Where are those kids that are chasing the bag now, right? And so putting all your eggs in that basket early really puts your kids in harm's way when you talk about just the nature of NIL. It's always been about the money, but I think when you start to understand, I'm here to play, obviously, the sport, but most importantly, I'm here to be a professional student. I'm here to get my degree, again, to be sustainable in life after sports. I have to go ahead and migrate towards that opportunity. I remember when I was at Cal, my mother was really big. She was a vice mayor of Berkeley back in the day, and she was really big on, hey, you know what? Sport is great, but you come from a village of great academic, professionals, right? And we want you to see yourself in that manner. Playing the sport is great, but we want to make sure you're doing the things that you want to do in the classroom. Long story short, from there, I remember my counselors saying, "Hey, man, you're here to play ball, and here's the list of majors that you can pick from." But nothing on there was related to business school. And that was my goal as far as me walking in from high school into college. My mom knew that. And so when I came back home, told mom, hey, you know what? I think I picked out my major. It's going to be social science. And mom said, why'd you change your mind? And I was like, well, I really didn't. I mean, that was the only option that was on the list. She said, what are you talking about? What list? It was a list that was given to me by my counselors to say this was like the most football friendly majors that I could actually partake in. Unbeknown to me, until I graduated. I understood my mom went up to see the chancellor of UC Berkeley that day and said, who in the hell told my son that he couldn't major in the business school? He has the grades, he has all the classes, the credits. Who in the hell told him that? And Miss Davis said, wasn't me, right? Well, somebody at your university that you hired told my son that he couldn't do that. And that's not how we roll in this family, in this village. So whoever did that, we got to correct that ASAP, or you're gonna have to deal with me within my city. This is my city. I'm the vice mayor of this city. If you want to go down that road, we can. So they picked the battle with the wrong village, so to speak, right? So about a month later, I get a letter in the mail saying I got into the Haas Business School. I came to my mom. Mom was smiling, all happy, but she already knew the story. She told me all that stuff later on, and that was really the foundation of what I felt like was important to understand, that you have to have a village of people, especially during this time of NIL, to really protect our kids beyond this transactional mindset that's laid out. You're making great money in NIL if you happen to do that, but there's so much more there that has to be protected in that process, because again, the actual purpose of the school is to make dollars. They're doubling down on that. We are a commodity in that space. If you don't change your mindset or be very intentional as a student athlete to fight for your position, to want more as a student and then an athlete later, you're not going to get it. So you have to understand the business model that you're walking into, number one, first, right? It is business, but to get what you need to get out of it is on you as a family and on you as a village. So if you don't have the people around you to fight for you and fight for your kids in that transactional world, you know what? That's going to be the hard rub, right? But if you do have people around you that understand the business concept, and you have a village that's going to fight to make sure that happens, where you extract the athletic side, or actually the academic side from this experience, now you have a chance to get to what you want to get to long term. That's not the practice. That's not the business model set up at the schools. They're there to make a transaction, to make money. That's it. So I'm really emotional about that, because if you don't speak up for yourself, right, or your village doesn't do it in your behalf, you will be swallowed up in this process, not having a degree, not having the credits to graduate, right? Maybe not having the financial literacy to grow whatever money that you did get when you're playing, right? All these things, you can almost argue you're in a worse off position than when you started if you walk in with the wrong mindset into this whole NIL transactional world. So if you have the wrong mindset, you can be in a worse off position.
If a student athlete signs $100,000 NIL deal tomorrow, what
Yes,
should
sir.
that family do in the first 30 days?
Put that money away, separate the taxes, right? The things that you have to, that's due, right, on those dollars, they're going to be number one, taxes. I can't tell how many times I've seen kids and families spend all that money up, and then you have the IRS knock on the door and said, hey, what's my cut? Right? You are a 1099 wage independent contractor. You're not an employee, right? That's still being battled in the courts. But right now, it's 1099 money. It's not being taxed. So if you spend that money up, right, without putting the money aside to pay your taxes, that's the number one issue. The number two issue is, how are you growing wealth versus, i.e., the element of being rich? Are we confused about those elements and how you actually invest your dollars? Are you investing in things that depreciate, such as cars and jewelry and these things? Or are we building wealth as far as equity in things that do appreciate, stocks, bonds, any other index funds, anything connected to ownership gives me the ability to actually have wealth or equity? Do I have that in my portfolio? Is it well diversified? What people do I have around my team? Right? So the first 30 days, to answer your question, definitely separate the money from the taxes. Number one, start to look at building wealth as far as diversifying within different buckets, short-term, long-term investments, looking at your guaranteed income streams, looking at your insurance elements. Those are the pieces I would look at in the first 30 days for sure.
Why do so many athletes earn substantial money but fail to build lasting wealth?
You know what? I think it goes back to what I just said earlier. I think there is a illusion that being rich is being wealthy. I think you can be a rich individual and it looks like you're wealthy. And so you don't have to do the things as a wealthy individual does to grow their wealth to be sustainable over a longer period of time. In the short term, you have so much active income that comes in, right, to replace what you spent. So when that keeps happening after every semester, every year, until the active income runs out, right now, once that happens, now you see the deficit or gap between the wealthy individual and the rich individual, right? So I think those are the elements that I see the biggest flaw of the lack of financial literacy that goes into explaining what these two worlds look like, even though they look similar in the first couple of years or maybe 3 years when active income is still there and is still present. But when the active income leaves because of injury, eligibility leaving, or just not good enough, whatever it is, then you see the gap between the two worlds. And they say, oh my God, I was never wealthy to begin with. No, you were just rich, right? And you invested in things that depreciated. So not understanding the difference of those two worlds and the contrast, I think is some of the biggest errors that I've seen.
Great information. Great information, man. Now, what's the first financial lesson every young athlete should learn before they ever receive a scholarship, endorsement, or NIL check?
I think that being one of them. So going back to your legacy plan, like, where we spend a big time within Ethos talking about these 4 pillars, one's identity, one's purpose, your value systems, right? And then looking at vision and your goals, right? What's your vision and how do you set those goals to get to that vision? I think those go hand in hand with how you invest your money. And so not understanding, again, who you are and what your values are, I think you have the ability to chase the wrong dollar, the dollar that's not impactful or impactful for the wrong reasons, or the ones that's not going to make a big difference, or it's not going to be in alignment with who you are. So not all good money, all money's not good money, as they say when you're playing dominoes, right? So that's what I see in this element in the same way. I really believe that. So understanding this foundational piece has a direct correlation, right, with financial literacy. So not having those values, not understanding who you are has a direct impact in how we invest our dollars, right? So to give you an example, I think you look at a credit score. A credit score is part of our identity in the financial world, right? Knowing who you are in self, but also identity in the financial world. So there's a lot of comparisons that I can see from the legacy plan and financial literacy that go hand in hand. Every dollar in our budget, right, has a purpose, just like we have a purpose, right? This dollar right here is to pay rent. This dollar right here is to pay for food. This dollar right here is to pay for credit card bills, right? I have to invest my dollars the same way as far as my purpose. And if I are not in line with that purpose, my budget gets out of whack. Well, it's the same thing happens here when I invest my time and I'm not intentional about following things that are valuable to me, that are in my purpose. I'm going to make the wrong decision. I'm going to invest my time in the wrong things that are not in alignment with me. So understanding these two mechanisms, right, and how they work together is what I would definitely strive to tell student athletes to do.
And how can families shift their mindset from chasing income to building legacy?
Great question. I think it's just knowing, right? I think when you can really see and understand the value of both worlds side by side, I think it's pretty easy to say, man, I want this long-term wealth. I want there's a dollar that keeps giving me back equity even when I'm asleep. when they understand how this works over here on the right side versus the active income that dies when I can't play, it becomes very easy to say, which one do you want? Now it's really a question on how do I actually build it? And so once you can understand the two worlds and how they compare and contrast, then I think it becomes easier to say, now I'm motivated to learn how to build that world, to build the right infrastructure and have the right financial tools to build that wealth. So I think not knowing is the biggest hurdle. Once we know, I think now we can do better. And I think that's the biggest issue, because this is things that we don't teach in high school. We don't teach in elementary school, right? And we expect our kids and families to get it overnight just because they got a bag of money. They don't get a bag of information and knowledge to go with the bag of money. They get the bag of money. And then you find out later how to deal with it. So if we can get on this stuff earlier by way of what we've built, and we're just one solution to a bigger issue, in having this conversation of understanding your legacy plan, understanding how your money works along with that legacy plan, and then learn the tools to manifest wealth. I think those are the reasons and the benefits of how this actually can move forward long term, I think, with our families.
And what's the balance between supporting a child's athletic dreams and putting too much pressure on them to succeed?
Man, that's a tough one. I've seen a lot of our families or parents living through their kids, right? You know, not understanding this long game of understanding wealth and say, I gotta make it. Our kid has to make it. And NIL is now right here, so you don't have to make it to the league to get life-changing money, possibly. You gotta find a balance, you know, with our parents, to not live through some of maybe your experiences, being open to understanding that this is a new time, understand, like you said earlier in your questioning, the ability to allow yourself to let your kid fall, to get back up, right? But at the same time, we want to see this kid, want to see our kid win. There's so much there at risk, right? That I think that some people, i.e. say, we got to get this right. I can't tell how many times I've seen people here in my hometown in Frisco. They come here from different places around Texas because this is, you know, Sports City, USA, which is Frisco. And so they drop academics and they go right into the sports world, and they put all this pressure on this kid. And then it builds this mental, you know, deficit, if you will, this mental health piece that I've seen, where I got to make my mom happy. Sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I see kids that don't really love the sport. They love mom, they love dad, and they see the sports as the conduit to that love. And so I see this fight to say, I'm only doing this because my mom and dad really want me to do this. But Coach D, man, I don't want to be here. Right? I really don't like this. Well, what do you like? Well, I want to do something else. I mean, I like it, but I don't love it like that. And so I think there has to be a level of grace that we have to give ourselves as parents, number one, because sometimes we may not know. But at the same time, we have to give that grace to our kids too, to ask those questions. You know, where do you see yourself when it's all said and done? Forget about what I want, son. I'm going to love you regardless, right? It's not tied to the transaction, maybe like your coach may see it. I love you regardless. You got value to me regardless. Where do you see yourself going beyond this? Do you see yourself being more than this athlete? And how can I support you? Having those conversations, I think, are super important, because now you're drawing in another element to say, my love for you is not tied to a transaction, right? It is something holistic. It's not going to change regardless of what the score is, what it's not, what deal you get, what deal you do get. Like, I don't care. I think that's one of the most important things that we can tell our kids, so we know that it's not going to move. It's not going to die out because of the transaction. that allows for us to have these deeper conversations with our kiddos about what that looks like for us long term, and takes that mental pressure edge off. This, I'm going to love you regardless of what the score is. I just want to make sure you're in a place where you want to be, where you want to be successful, and let me support that. And so if we can get to that space, I think that's a better village concept. How can we do that as a village? Because sometimes we may not have all the answers as one parent to one child, but within the village, we can all work together, right, to find the right answer for that kid to be successful.
Great information, man. I'm loving this conversation, man.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
mental wellness is one of the pillars of Ethos Village.
Yes,
Why is
sir.
mental health still such a difficult conversation in the Black community?
I think it's that hush hush thing, right? I think part of us being Black men, I can't tell people I'm hurting. I can't cry. I can't say I messed up and I got to do better. I think we come from obviously the origin of our race. Our culture has been displaced for many, many years of disconnection. And so I think we are rooted in trying to find that mental stability as Black men in this country. We find it in sports because I think sports has been identified or entertainment largely has been identified for us to have our own place to live and manifest in this country. It's not the only place, but it's what's been allowed and been acceptable. I think once we work from that box or that paradigm of thinking, that's when the mental challenges really start to rear their heads, right? And the thing is, it has to end, especially from the sports side. No matter how good you are, there is no direct correlation with that. It's just age. It's your health. At some point in time, you can't run as fast anymore. You can't jump as high anymore, right? So you have to migrate into another world that you may have not thought about you exist or have value in. So the sooner we can get into breaking down those walls, along with other things that are embedded in us as a culture, and then having the ability to have, people there that can talk to you in this safe haven, where you're not going to get ridiculed because you're asking for help. Talk to a therapist and having these tough conversations, because if not, it's going to fester. Like anything else that's held within, it's going to fester. It's going to try to work itself out, right? And it works itself out through disease, through emotion, through obviously the lack of mental health elements there. And I think that's where we have to always go back and give ourselves that grace as a culture, as men. It is a tough road. There's a lot of things that are seen or put in front of us for us to say that, yeah, we're going to lose. Yeah, the odds are stacked up against us. I get it. But we don't have to do this, by ourselves. That's the number one thing I've learned. Also trying to find balance in your life. That balance is critical. I think with mental health, I think being too far into the future and being too far in the past, has the ability to flare up, right? This anger or uncertainty or this fear, and not being present, right? To say, I can't control what's going to happen out here or what just happened, 2-3 years, prior to this date, but I can handle the now, right? And finding places to live in the now also helps the mental health perspective, along with having those conversations, along with giving us the grace and mercy that's due us, based on, again, our relationship with God. So yeah, that's kind of how I would address that.
Wow, man, I'm loving this conversation. I mean, I'm really loving this conversation, brother. So I'm gonna ask you the hard question now. Michael
Okay.
Davis, are you enjoying yourself on Black Men Sundays, brother?
I'm loving it, bro. I'm loving it. It's good. Good stuff. Good stuff. I love it, man.
Def-
This is, like I said, great conversation. It's overdue for us as Black men to have this conversation. There's so much that we can do for one another in our village, to support one another. We don't have all the answers. I know we're hurting. There's a lot of pain. It's a lot of reflection on Father's Day, right? A lot of things we've done well, a lot of things we didn't do well. But we're still here. We're still swinging, right? And I think that's a kudos to you and your vision, having this platform to have these, like I said, tough conversations, tough questions, but also leaving people with the ability of having hope, right? And having some answers and saying, man, I'm not done. There's something out here for me. This guy had issues. That guy had issues. You know what? We all can do it together and find a way to rebound and pour back into one another. I found that, the tough things that I know I've been through, and maybe you have too, wasn't just meant for me. It was meant to work through me to be able to bless others, to tell that story, to testify to certain things. So I think that's all of the benefit, again, having a platform like this, having a village like Ethos Village, being able to work through these things together makes it a lot easier.
Oh yeah, it definitely does, because just doing my research and just talking to brothers in our community, I feel like mental health is something that we just don't talk about. So I said,
Right.
because when I first started doing Black Men Sundays, we were straight, generational wealth, finance, and business. But then as I started having different experts, different CEOs, different entrepreneurs on, they all would bring up mental health. So I said, you know what?
Yeah.
Let me dive deeper into that, so I feel like it's more complete, because it's kind of like you can have all the money in the world, but if your mental health isn't right, you in
Right.
trouble. And if your health isn't right, you in trouble.
That's
So
right.
that's why I said, you
That's
know what?
right.
I need to add that to the conversation, because I remember
Yeah.
a brother actually listened to Black Men Sundays early on. And when we brought up mental health, he said, man, I'm on here to talk about money and finance. What does mental health and my health have to do with that? I said, you know what? Because you said that, you really need to tune in. Yeah, yeah, because that's real talk. Because if your health
That's
ain't
right.
right, you're
That's
not
right.
gonna have any money,
Right.
because the
Right.
doctor's going to drain that up. And if
Right.
your
Right.
mental
Right.
health isn't right, you're gonna have issues where you might not even know what you're doing. So
That's
everything
right.
flows hand to hand. So after thinking about it, I said I need to add that and somehow incorporate mental health into every show. Like even if it's health, even if it's extra and heavy finance, we still have to
Mhm.
include that. So we're definitely doing that,
Amen.
man. So like I said, I appreciate you coming on the show, having this conversation, man. So let's jump back in real quick, man. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
you've coached athletes, advised
Mm-hmm.
families, and built
Mm-hmm.
businesses. So what
Mm-hmm.
separates the young people who become leaders from those who simply become successful?
I think the leadership element is, it's bigger than just the title, right? It's bigger than just, you say success. You think about the titles, you think about the money. I think a leader can lead without having the money, right? Without having the titles. They can be impactful based on action, being consistent with action, meeting people where they are, right? All these things build the credibility, where it's not just a transactional element that says, hey, I'm successful. I got this, I got that, I got this, I got this money. But the transformational elements, I think, really go into building long lasting legacies and leadership in those relationships, because they're real, right? It's not going to be changed by or impacted because of a lack of title or lack of money, right? And so I think that's the bigger thing I see in successful leaders that I've been around. It is, yeah, they may or may not have a title, but they're able to impact through action and consistency, and then meeting people where they are. I've seen, and not every coach I've had has led like that. I've had only a few coaches that do that, and that's what I actually link on to. Mike Singletary is like a father figure to me. I coached with him at TCA several years ago, and I remember we used to go on these long walks before and after practice around the track, and we would just talk about life. We would talk about being a father. just different things that we as Black men had to fight and work through. The misnomer that you are a dumb athlete, that you can't do certain things without, being involved in a sport. And then working back, I'm seeing, yeah, he had the title of being who he was, but he met me where I was, and being a young Black man, young Black coach at that time. And he never threw out his resume, right? He met me where I was and always talked to me as an equal. And then again, having that consistency in having those conversations, being there on time, doing the things that he said he was going to do for us. And I try to replicate that. And I saw that in other coaches that I had. I want to do that as being a mentor and leader within Ethos. And so it's not about, again, those transactional elements about success. I think that sometimes gives some level of credibility to say he must know what he's talking about because he's got this championship. He's won, he's developed this amount of money, whatever that the results are. But is that still being an impactful element in that relationship with that person real time? And that's where I think the rub happens. Sometimes it may, a lot of times that I've seen it doesn't, without having those other leadership elements in place.
Man, this is phenomenal right here. I feel like I could talk to you all day, man. So let me ask you, yeah, man. So let me ask you this though. How can
Yeah.
parents prepare their children for life if professional sports never becomes a reality?
I think it goes back to, looking at the whole picture, right? The proper mental paradigm of saying, hey, professional sports, yeah, it's an option. You don't want to crush that. I mean, that's something that you want to shoot for. But what you're here to do, what is sustainable, is going to be the academics. What's going to get you in the door. It's going to pay for school. It's going to pay for all these things to have these, again, transformational, elements is going to be education. It's going to be academia. That's going to get you to have this long life with purpose, right? And so if we're flipping that and say the only thing that matters is professional sports, and we already know the numbers ain't changing. It's less than the percent that's going to make it, right? And if they're going to make it, it's going to be three years or less, right? So the chances are 90.95% are not going to make it to the league, right? That is just what it is, right? And then you start to work your way backwards when you talk about Division I ball, Division II, NIL, rev share, right? Those percentages are just as small based on the general population, what you draw it from. So even if, again, you make it, you still have to go back to the foundation of self, right? So let's spend more time on that, God willing that we live long enough to achieve the things that, we're allowed to within our God-given purpose. But that's where the root of your time and investment should be, on the value of self, understanding that element, because it won't be on the sport. As much as we see the attention that's on it, the media attention, I mean, everything is very intentional around it. It is, again, it's not long lasting. So it's a shot, you get your money, and you have to be very intentional with a plan of action if and when you make it through these different stages of your career. If you don't, it's okay. You still value, you still love, and you still got purpose, you still got value. Great. That's still part of my long-term plan. But again, it can't be the centerpiece. And I think that's the point where we as a village try to just slightly change, not try to eliminate, not discourage, but say that, yeah, that's just one of the many great things you can do. But again, that's not who you are. There's a much bigger piece around that. And spending time in that vein, I feel long-term that builds a person with impact, a great leadership qualities, financial literacy. I think those elements go hand in hand. But again, you have a healthy individual that is ready to be impactful in their communities, within their families, with that type of mindset, because those other things can go. those other things will leave. And especially when you don't have those other things to leverage as a foundational piece, right? They definitely going to leave quicker when you don't have those things in place.
Interesting. Now, looking back on your journey from college football to finance,
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, education, what lessons took you the longest to learn?
That's a really tough one, man. Some of these things that I say weren't just like I got it and I always got it, right? I tested the boundary, so to speak. I remember, just what I said was a hard thing for me to put into practice at times. When I came out of UC Berkeley, I had a chance and I played Canadian ball. And I remember before Canadian ball, going out to different NFL camps, getting released and then coming back home and then feeling like I was a failure. All the homies, they're going to be real with you, you know what I mean? And they spoke from what they saw as being that valuable piece of what Mike Davis was to them was here's a dude that made it. He played D1 ball, he's the homie, right? Now he has a chance to play in the league and he doesn't do it. He failed us. Right. And I felt it. I took that on the chin. And I remember mom saying, you got to remember what we talked about. I know you love it. I know it's a big part of your heart and big part of your soul and your spirit. But damn, I'm going to give you about a couple of weeks to cry about this thing. And then we back at it. That's how mom rolls. You're like, all right, I get it. It meant a lot to you. Put a lot of sweat, tears, and all this stuff into it. But we can't forget what it is that we said we're going to do. And I remember that place coming to a head when I was in Memphis. This when they had American franchises in the CFL. I was in hot Memphis, Tennessee. And I was like, man, this is not cool. I ain't feeling Tennessee. I mean, great people, but mosquitoes look like birds. I mean, they were huge. And I was like, man, do I really want to be here? And I remember getting a fellowship opportunity to go to Northeastern. And they said, hey, for you to get this fellowship, it's going to pay for all your tuition, books, and fees. You got to come now. And the season was about to start in the CFL. And I told my agent, I said, you know what? I'm going to retire. I'm out. He said, what are you talking about? We just signed your contract. And I was like, dude, I know, but there's a bigger calling for me because this plan I put in place a long, long time ago that told me I needed to go to grad school before I can actually start my business, get the intellect and things I need to have in place as far as tools, right? From a corporate level to grow my business the way I wanted to. I had to go to grad school. And I left. And I remember my teammate saying, dude, you're going back to school? I don't understand it, right? So going back to your question, I think there's always this fight, this pull and this tug of yourself, even though you know the answers. Sometimes you got to fight yourself and the people around you to really put those things back in the focus. So those are things I remember, just remembering that I had to stay the course. No matter what it felt like, the pain, the anxiety, feeling like a failure, all those things can drive you away from the core of who you are and what you say you can do. But I think ultimately those are some of the things I would always had to go back in my mind to remind myself. So I wouldn't say it was just one thing that I just had to keep learning. I think it was the overall element of who I was and what I was trying to achieve long term.
And if every parent, coach, athlete, and young Black man listening today could leave with one message from you, what would that message be?
Believe in your journey. Be faithful to your journey. Believe in that. Give yourself grace as you go through this long process that we talked about before. You're not going to find your purpose overnight. You have to be around people that will help you do that. But again, I think definitely understand that you're more valuable than what society says you can only do, especially as a student athlete or just an athlete by itself. Because again, from their paradigm, their lens, they only see you one way. It's up to you as a village, as a family, as a student athlete to see yourself as more. Once you understand what the system's all about, you can no longer blame the school anymore, right? You know what they're about. Then you know how they see you. It ain't changing. Matter of fact, they're going to double down on it. But what do you see in yourself, right? That you have to hold true to, you have to protect as an individual student athlete and also as a village, as a family. How do we protect this holistic view of ourselves beyond how they see us, and hold true to that? Be around people that resonate with that, because it's going to be a place where you have to be reminded of it. Because again, that noise is deafening. That noise is loud. That money's going to get even bigger, right? And it's going to be easier for you to do and sign and be a part of things that are not in agreement or in alignment with your value systems, with where you want to go long term. There's going to be more reasons to kind of deviate from that, right? So who's in your corner? What people are around you that are vested in those same things and how you see yourself? And if you don't see yourself like that yet, let's work on that, right? Let's work on that. I mean, give yourself that grace, give yourself that mercy to go ahead and rewrite some wrongs, right? That's how you learn.
Great information, man. And for brothers and sisters listening that, want to contact you or get connected with the Ethos Education Group and the Ethos Village platform, how can you be contacted?
Absolutely. Going to ethoseducationgroup.org. There is a contact form you can fill out. There's our number that's there. They can give me a direct call. But my email is probably the best way, at mdavis@ethoseducationgroup.com. mdavis, ethoseducationgroup.com. That's my direct email. We can have a correspondence and communication, have further conversation about what we talked about here today. Also being part of the village is absolutely free to be a part of the village. So love to have you be a part of what we're doing, how we're doing it. Don't have to be a part of a certain school district. But again, if you are looking for people to leverage information and who've done it the right way for many, many years, we are the village that will fight for you.
Yeah, so Michael, that wraps up our main show on Black Men Sundays. But we have a subscriber only segment for brothers and sisters that want to dive deeper into this conversation. So I'm going to ask you what you do if your own son signed a $100,000 NIL deal tomorrow, because most parents think they know the answer, but I have a feeling you're going to challenge that thinking. So we're going to save that conversation for our Sunday Circle subscribers. So let's jump right into that right now.
It's a Black Man Sunday.